Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the Grace Prep Podcast. My name is Joshua Young.
I'm Lily Malone.
And I'm Carter Casteel.
I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. So excited. We'll have a wonderful time.
We'll see at the end if you're still excited.
No, I definitely will.
If you're like me and you love sipping on a good coffee under a disco ball in an upbeat atmosphere, Two Rivers is your new place. It's down the road from New Braunfels High School. Just pop in to experience the vibes and taste some of the best coffee in Texas. In a world full of fast and convenient coffee, Two Rivers is set apart by their unwavering dedication to quality. They set the bar high with their scratch kitchen and use of real ingredient, just delicious syrups. Go grab a cup, meet a friend, or just have a study session and enjoy the vibes. Two Rivers Coffee is more than just a coffee shop. It is an experience.
One place I wanted to start the podcast was before we were recording. You said you grew up in
Monahans,
Texas, and you were the best baseball player there.
I was born in 42, and that's not when little girls got to do lots of things except play with dolls. And I liked baseball and guns and, cowboy and Indians. Anyway, we played sandlot, or workup, they call it, baseball, with a softball.
Yeah.
And so I always was picked first because I was the tallest. I could throw the ball the best, and I could catch, and I was really good at hitting. So we played at recess at our little school out in Wickett, Texas. And when I was in the third grade, they passed out the little cards for you to be a baseball player in Little League, and they didn't give me a card.
Uh-oh.
Because girls didn't play.
Yeah.
I was very unhappy, and I had a really great mom who just told me, there's other ways to make this work. You'll learn the system. You can make a difference. And my dad would tell me things like, you can do anything you want to do. For example, he didn't have a golf team. Girls didn't play golf, but I played golf, and I played with my daddy. And I learned to not get excited about not being allowed with a team. I played where I could. And I went on to the University of Texas and played golf in the intramurals, everybody, and I won the championship.
No way.
And now girls play baseball, and girls play golf, great golfers, and and they played in those days, but there were few.
Very few, yeah. When you were little, did not being able to play ever affect you, or were you always hurt, or were you like,
well,
oh,
it
this
would
is
hurt
whatever?
my feelings, but and I would figure out a way to get you. I'd say, and I don't mean that in an ugly way, but a way to make a change. And I knew, and I know today, sometimes you have to wait a while, but you have to work it.
Yes.
And so you have to not give up. You have to persevere, and I did. And
Look what happened. You were the best of the best.
Now, I do a lot of things that girls didn't do. When I first married, and Tom and I lived in Austin, when I got out of college at the University of Texas in 1965, women were either homemakers at home, moms.
Yeah.
They were a secretary or a nurse or a teacher, maybe worked in a home economics field, and that was it. That's what you did. And so I remember one time after I had gotten to be a lawyer, my neighbor, who was an architect down on Rio Drive here in New Braunfels, came by to see me to see if I could fix a ticket for him. And I said, sure, I know that judge. That's a woman judge. Her name was Sue, and she had been a math teacher at New Braunfels High School. And he said, what do you mean, a woman judge? Women aren't supposed to be judges or lawyers. I said, well, you're asking this lawyer to help you. I said, what are they supposed to be? Well, and then he gave the list, a mother or a teacher. His mother had been a teacher.
Yeah.
So, you had to deal with people like that you might call bigots, but I never got mad at them. I just figured out a way I'd change their mind.
Yeah.
So did you find that kind of adversity fueled you versus hindering you?
Well, everybody gets hindered. Not everybody can be on the volleyball team. Everybody wants to play. I remember I had one grandchild wanted to play, but she didn't make it. That doesn't hinder you. It just makes you either find your niche or work harder to get in that. So
Yep.
I don't think I've had, let's put it this way, I've had some roadblocks and I got around them.
That's a great way to think
That
of it.
is a great way to think of it. That is a great way to think of it. What is probably the biggest roadblock you've encountered? What is the biggest roadblock you've encountered in your life?
I can't think I ever had. I mean, I had many, like I just told you. They wouldn't let me play baseball, and then I couldn't be on the golf team. I don't think I ever had a one that just took me down.
Yeah.
I've had the same experiences of roadblocks that most people have.
Okay.
And I can't think of any. Well, one, I guess that it's not a roadblock, but my mother died when I was 14. Wow. Now, that's not something you can get around, but it did, I guess, make me experience things that made me change, and I'm sure I'm different than I had if I'd had my mother all this time.
Yeah.
But I had a great dad, and he was there. He went to everything I ever did. My parents married when they were older. In those days, people married young. I think my mother was in her early 30s, and my dad was 46. And so when she died, he was 60, and I'm 14. And he was a great parent, and I had a grandmother that lived with us. And so, you know, it wasn't a pleasant year, but I learned to live with it. And here I am, 81 years of age, and I'm sure I'm different.
Yeah. Let's shift real quick to when I called it a congresswoman before, but remind me what it is again.
Okay, I was in the Texas legislature. In Austin.
Okay.
And I was in the House.
Okay.
There's 150 members in the House. I was one of those, and I represented this area. And so we make laws for Texas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So describe to me how you got there.
Well, it was a journey, and I first, as I told you, was a school teacher. And then when I got to be around 39, my dad that I was just talking about was ill, and I knew he was not going to live long. And he had saved a little money, wasn't a lot. And I'd heard a woman, the woman judge that I told you about, being a math teacher, she would come to the Canyon High School where I taught, and it was either career day or law about her journey as a teacher and then becoming a lawyer. Yeah. So I thought, I can do that. And it was our daughter had just gone off to college, and I was struggling with. She was gone. Barron was at home, was a 6th grader, and I thought, I can do that. I can make this work. So my husband was a great guy. He supported me in anything I ever want to do. And he told me, he said, well, you want to go to law school, you go on. So I started and went to law school at St. Mary's, graduated, and then came back here in New Braunfels to practice law with Edward Badu, who was a great mentor. And he loved to be behind his desk running whatever was going on in the city. Yeah. So somewhere, I think, it was in my 2nd year of law school, they asked me to run for the school board, and I did. So I served on Comal ISD. So that was my kind of intro into running for office. Now, because when I was a school teacher, Matt Kyle's daddy, asked me if I'd be on the Parks Board. So those were the kind of early stepping stones that got me. You wanted to know how I got to Austin. But, and I taught Sunday school here at the Methodist Church. So every little volunteer thing that I did or tried to do got me ready to do other things. Yeah. So while I was on the school board, I was asked by some folks if I'd run for county judge of Comal County, and I said, sure, I think that'd be great. My mother had worked for the county judge when she was a younger woman out in Monaghan, so I was elected county judge just by 135 votes. It was tough, and it was a man. I beat him, and I was the first woman that ever got to be on and I don't think there's been one since, but there will be, county judge. There have been other county court law judges and district judges, but anyway, I I did that for 8 years. And my son, or our son, I should say, Barron came back and started practicing law with me, and I didn't want to get in my kids' way by being in politics. It was their time to grow, and I was, I don't know, probably 58, 59 at the time. And Barron said, Mother, you ought to run for the state house, because Edmund Kemple, who I adored, had just retired. And that's not right. He didn't retire. He had been redistricted out of Comal County. Every 10 years they changed the districts, and Comal County was vacant. We got, because you can only have so many people in your district. Anyway, I ran for it and got elected, and I served there 4 years, and I ran for the third time, got defeated by about 47 votes. You know, that's another life lesson. If you don't try something, you can't win something. Now, you're going to lose.
So true.
You're going to lose, and I don't like to lose. I don't like to lose as a lawyer. I don't like to lose elections, but you do, and you gain from that. You grow from that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That is so good. If you fall, get back up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was talking about my mother earlier. My mother was probably an early woman that tried to achieve things in West Texas, and she'd go down to the corner drugstore where all the people who ran the town, kind of like it was in Krause's at the Stomptish table, that she'd go down, and in those days everybody smoked, and they'd smoke and drink coffee, and she'd talk politics and learn what was going on. Well, Ward County didn't have a library. Now think about that, a county not having a library. And this would probably be in the early 40s, the late 30s. So she gathered up a group of young women, and they went to the commissioner's court to see what they could achieve. Now, she had been working these people, and they were all men. She had been working them. She knew she had 2 for the library and 2 opposed. Now, who can oppose a library? But that was the way it was. So they had a 5th person. You have 5 on a commissioner's court. She knew the one that wasn't for it. His name was George Bentley. She got up to the podium, and she gave her presentation, all these young women in the back, and everybody hoping we would get a library in Ward County. And she could tell George, and he was a big old heavy-set guy, probably weighed about 400 pounds. He was squirming up in his chair, and my mother, her name was Ilda Vernon at that time. She said, George, she didn't call him commissioner, and that would have been respectful. George, we all know in Ward County that you cannot read, but the rest of us can. He voted for the library.
No way.
He did.
Wow.
He didn't want to be known as the only person in Ward County that couldn't read.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
So I had great training. When you asked me how did I get where
Yeah.
I had great training and good role models. As parents, and you'll know this, your parents model for you life.
Yeah.
And I hope I've done that. Maybe that's why my kids became lawyers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Your son also became mayor of New Braunfels, right?
He was.
So you were probably that kind of role model for him to do that.
He really loves public service, and he ran for the Texas House 2 years ago and was defeated by a couple of hundred votes. So no, he loves public service, and he really loved being mayor and was a great mayor. So, and our daughter Cheryl, his older sister, was the CFO of New Braunfels Utilities. Now, that was a paid position, but it was still within the public arena, and she is real active in the Chamber of Commerce, Blue Coats, and anyway, all of my kids and my grandkids have kind of followed in steps of we need to give back because what was given to us is why we have such a good life.
I want to talk a little bit about your own law practice, right?
Yeah.
And you have children and grandchildren in your own law practice? Right on.
I do. I have Barron is my son.
Yes, ma'am.
And I now say my because I lost my husband about 3 years ago, but he was Tom's too. Tom and I were married about 59 years when he died. And he was a great modeler, too. He was the one that was kind of behind us all, just saying, I want you to do what you want to do, and I'll support you. In fact, Tom Casteel never, ever really said, we're going to do something. He wanted to do what you wanted to do, except one time. And that's when he said, we're moving to New Braunfels. And that was 50 years ago. Wow. And our life changed forever. He wanted to live in a house that his dad had owned, and he drove back and forth to Austin every day for 23 years so we could live here. So because of him getting us to move, that's why Barron, I'm sure, grew up like he did and wanted to become a lawyer. And he started practicing law with me in 1999. And our daughter, his big sister, Cheryl, I think it was 2005, she had been a CPA, and then she wanted to go to law school. So she went at about 40, and so she works with us. And then her daughter, Morrigan, who will be 30 this year, is a lawyer, and she's really terrific. And talk about not wanting to lose. Yeah. She'll outwork you every day. And she's tall and beautiful, blonde, and when she'll walk in the courtroom when she first got here, and you could see people on their face like, have you ever watched Legally Blonde?
I have.
Yeah, well,
yes,
it was
ma'am.
kind of that, what's that blonde? And then she would just, destroy them.
Yeah, that's awesome. How and why did you start your own law practice?
Well, I just sort of fell into it. While I was in law school, my dad passed away that first year, and you have to probate a will for things to, be effective. And so I went down to see my mother-in-law's lawyer, Eddie Badu, was an old-time lawyer here, and had represented her. And he told me, he said, well, Carter, you can probate this will. I'll show you how. And then that first summer, when this was going on, he said, why don't you come work for me? Well, I'd had some lawyer offer me $10 an hour to come work for him, and that was a lot of money then, and I was going to do that. And he said, no, you're not going to work for whoever it was. You're not doing that. And he gave me a reason why that made sense. You're going to come work for me for $4 an hour. Wow. And I went to work for him for $4 an hour, but it was like 2 hours in the afternoon. Yeah. It was just answering the phone, and so I learned from him and met other lawyers. And so when I got out of law school, he said, you come work for me, and every dollar you make, I'm going to give you 60 cents of it. I'll keep 40. You can use the desk, the phone. I mean, it was a sweetheart deal. And so he introduced me to a lot of community leaders because he enjoyed all that. One of the things that he would do every morning, he would go down to Krause's, and there was a table in the back corner. It's there now, but in those days it was configured a little differently. And all of the men in town, who ran the town, either quietly or not so quietly, would sit at that table at 6:30, another group at 7:30, and another group at 8:30. And the only women that sat there was Ms. Rydell, or Mrs. Badu, or Kermit Krause's wife, Mildred, or one of their children. And so, because I'm a female, I'm not going to be sitting at that table, so I want to know what they were talking about. So I would get to the table real close to there so I could hear them. I could hear in those days. And I would sit there and, have a piece of toast and drink a cup of coffee and listen to the plans for the community coming out of those men at the table. Wow. They called it the Stomptish table. It was a lot of fun.
What? Wow. That is so funny. You would go listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And I met a lot of them and knew a lot of them. Bill Arnold was the Baptist minister, and Jack Ulrich, who's almost 100, was there and was a financial person here, and I learned a lot from him. He was funny. Yeah. Some of his life lessons. I one time was talking to him with Tart Mund, who was another one, had been a commissioner about, I think Tom and I were out at the caverns for a lunch or something, and Tart was showing pictures of his grandchildren. So I asked Jack, I said, Jack, what are your grandchildren's names? I don't know their name till they're old enough to cut cedar. He was just, he was never paid,
Yeah.
never paid, never bought anything on credit. Always paid cash. He told me he used to, where the NBU is downtown?
Yes, ma'am.
There was a building down there called Ivan Fisher, and Jack would say, and Jack is an example of the kind of people that I'm talking about that ran this town in a good way. And they just all have these great stories. But Jack said, my daddy would bring me into town. He'd give me a quarter. I'd go to the store in Ivan Fisher and get a nickel's worth of candy, and I'd save the other 20. He said, I've never bought anything but with cash. And that was a lesson he brought to the city when he was mayor.
Yeah.
So, and there were many of those men like that at the table.
Wow. I see how important role models in your life are, because you as a person learn, and I also see how important it is for you to role model to others, like other people younger than you, and just teach them. Like,
That's right.
And you were literally a teacher.
Yeah.
You were always
And
teaching.
I see my students now, Sherman Krause, the county judge of Comal County, I taught in high school.
Wow.
Yeah, I've taught a lot of kids that it pleases me to see them. They're successful. They've raised families here. They've contributed to the community. Deb Waldrop, who is a judge for the district court, I taught in Sunday school. And so that doesn't mean anything except that I appreciate and love seeing these wonderful children that have grown up to be adults.
Yeah.
And what they now contribute.
Yes. I love that. Just keep the generations going.
Right.
That's
I used
so
to
good.
drag my children. I dragged them to everything I ever did, and I dragged my grandchildren. And sometimes I was successful getting them to go, and sometimes I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's funny. That's good. I love it's just so powerful to me that you're not really concerned about yourself. Like, you yourself will be fine, but you're like, these people, the people younger than me, the next generation.
Yeah. If you don't do that as a parent or as a community leader or as a minister or whatever your role in life is, if you don't teach those that are younger than you and then ease back and let them take the lead, then the world is never going to grow any better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that so
And
much.
sometimes most of the time you're successful. I think I only have 2 or 3 students that ever went to jail that I remember. Most everybody's been a great success. In fact, Kathy Murin that owns Clear Springs Catering, I had her in high school. And she's the most wonderful caterer and cook. And so I always tell the story. Now, I taught her government. I always tell the story. Kathy is so successful as a caterer because I taught her. And they say, Carter, you can't even cook. So
That's funny.
It's so cool that now you have like a little bit of a part of all these people who are so prevalent in New Braunfels.
Yeah.
Like, you have so many different connections because you've helped teach them.
Well, I've been here 50 years, and I
True.
didn't just, I chose to participate. Now, not everybody's going to do that, and that's fine. But for me, it was important, and I've enjoyed it. I still go to, as I say, I'm older than dirt. I still go to work every day.
Yeah. I actually want to touch on that. You are now doing, where did it go? You're part of, she's active in New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce and Rotary Club.
Right.
Can you describe to us what that is?
Well, the chamber is a group of businesses and people that want to make the community better and make the economy better for all of us. Yeah. And so when I first got here as a teacher and I found New Braunfels, I wanted to put a gate around it. I didn't want anybody else coming because they were getting in front of me when I wanted to get a donut at Krause's or the traffic was bad or I just thought, I'm here. Everybody stay away.
Yeah.
And so and while I taught school, Tom Purdom, who was the chair, he was the president of the chamber, would come and talk in my classroom. I didn't have a government book for city government, so I'd get all the people in town that were leaders to come to my classroom, and or we would go out to wherever they
Yeah.
were. We'd go to City Hall, the fire station. Well, Tom kept talking about the economy, and the more I listened to him, the more I got it. Well, when I got to be a lawyer, I marched myself down to the chamber and became a member. And, of course, about a bunch of people nearly fainted because the chamber is to promote the betterment of New Braunfels and economic growth.
Yeah.
And so that's the importance of it. I was chairman of the board, and I've received a bunch of honors and that they give. They do legends and honors hall, and it's a huge deal to be a participant, and you don't have to do anything but join. You pay a little membership fee, and then you have that opportunity to help New Braunfels be a better place. Yeah. And I knew if I did that, and I had children, they would come back here to work, and they have.
Yep. Yep.
Because they can make a living. And so now when I hear people say, "Well, I don't want any more people here," I said, "Well, I know a place you can move where you will be most happy, and that's Monahans, Texas. It had 3,000 when I was born there in 1942, and it has 3,000 today.
Still, yeah.
So if you don't want a growth, well, that's where you can go.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a part of a vibrant community, well, that's what the chamber and other leaders within it have promoted. And the good thing is, you were talking about Barron a minute ago, and Rusty, who was on a little earlier, the mayors, which, by the way, they don't make any money.
Oh, yeah, we heard that.
Yeah, it's $1. That's a freebie. Now, county judge, you got paid. But they have to work diligently to stay ahead of growth. And it's just like you drive I-35 and you complain. Well, in 1982, when I drove to law school, it was under construction.
Yep.
So they're consistently and constantly trying to stay ahead of the growth. But it's here. Mm-hmm. And if you want to, y'all can all come back here and work here because it's a good economy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Rotary just does great things throughout the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a business community.
Okay.
I'll tell you a funny story about that in a minute. But mainly they've eradicated polio throughout the world, and they just, like the Lions Club my daughter in, they have glasses and work with children that have the Lions Camp. I mean, those organizations, business people join, and they have a purpose to make the world a better place. Mm-hmm. But Rotary, for years, there was just one Rotary Club, and it was just all men. And so then another Rotary Club came along, and they had women in it. And so we have two Rotary clubs. They both do great work. One has only men. The other has women and men. And one guy named Dan Sedgwick, who was the head of DTEX, when they let women into Rotary, probably whenever they made that rule, I don't remember how long ago it was, he said he was just killed by it. He said, Rotary is the last bastion of manhood.
That's funny. That's so funny.
I think it was just a place they could get away from their wives and their children, maybe. But anyway.
Wow.
But they do good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kiwanis is another. Anytime you're within a community, if you want to help make it better, there are lots of places you can volunteer. Your church, those are civic clubs, business clubs, women's clubs, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you a Christian? What is your faith life?
Well, my mother was a Baptist.
Okay.
My father was an Episcopalian.
Okay.
They didn't think that was going to work, so they became Presbyterian.
Okay.
And my mother was superintendent of Sunday school. My dad was a deacon and a trustee of the church.
Okay.
And I was, when Presbyterian church, you got christened.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I later, when I got married, I was married in the Methodist church by a one-armed Baptist minister named Levi Price, whose son is a minister, and I went to school with. There's a story behind that which I won't tell, but from there, my husband was a Methodist. Okay. stayed a Methodist until probably not too long ago, about 3 years ago, when Tom died. Ray Steele did his service, and I just love the outreach of that church. So I now go to Oakwood Church.
Right on.
And so if you're asking me if I'm a Christian, yes.
Okay.
Do I believe in Christ? Yes.
Yes.
Have I
Yes.
been that way all my life? Yes. I've had some moments when my mother died, I wasn't very happy.
Yeah. Yeah, totally get that. How has your faith life influenced being a lawyer? Like, will you take certain cases where you're like,
Yeah. Well, mainly I do family law. And, if it's really hard, but if you think, and there's a cliche, what would Jesus do? I mean, you just can't get run over, and I'm not suggesting that, but you can be kind and nice and considerate. Now, some people may not think that's the way I am, if I've maybe beaten them in the courtroom or had to, question them on a cross-examination. Yeah. But there is no excuse for bad manners or being mean.
Yep.
Or calling people names. And we're not perfect. The only one that's perfect, as we know today, was crucified. The rest of us have to watch it. And I love it when somebody gets up and pretends that they're better than, and I remind myself, I don't think they've read the Bible. Maybe they haven't read the 10 Commandments.
Yeah. Wow. There's I know of some students at our school who want to be lawyers.
Yeah.
Is there any particular parts that you're like, know this before you actually want to become a lawyer?
Well, I have another granddaughter, by the way, is in her 3rd year of law school.
Wow.
And so I would tell you what we do at our office. My daughter is real good about this. Cheryl does all of our trust, estates, wills. Barron and I and Morgan do mainly family law. But Cheryl is good about going to the schools that New Braunfels, Canyon, I'm not sure that y'all have a program out here, but where kids work, and she will hire them. She works with some of those business teachers or career teachers that have kids that are wanting to explore. And so they'll come and work at our office maybe 2 hours a day, and to see if they like what we do.
Do they get paid $4?
We're not responsible for it, but we've coached them and modeled for them. And I think there's been 10 or 12 young people that are now lawyers that have worked in our office.
That's amazing.
And so that, I think one of them, Dr. Muchigamba's boy, and I think it's the one that's the podiatrist. It's Clay, I think. He worked, his daddy wanted him to be a lawyer. And so he worked for us, but he went into the medical field. But so when you say, what do you need to know? If you think you want to be something, it doesn't hurt to kind of explore that career day or a job there, and you're going to find out, well, maybe that is not what I want to do. But I think anybody who wants to be a lawyer, if you want to be a lawyer, you want to be able to assist people. That's your job. And I never liked criminal law. But my friend that I went to law school with always told me, Wade Arledge Carter, everybody deserves to have the representation in the courtroom. And I said, I know, but gosh, that's hard. He said, not all people are guilty, and so they're entitled to that. Anyway, I didn't particularly care for criminal law. So I just fell into family law. When I was here, I think there was one other woman that was a family lawyer or was a lawyer. And I think now there are many. And now we have 2 women district judges and 1 woman county law at court judge. And we've had 1 other prior to that. So a lot of women have gone into the field of law. But I think you just go because you want to help people. Now, if you think you want to go in there to make a lot of money or to be a hot shot or a big shot, you might as well get over that. You can make a good living. You can have a nice life, and I think if you involve yourself in the community and share your skills with others, then it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Oh, so true. So true. Before we wrap up, do you have any questions for me or Lily? Anything?
So what do you want to do?
What do I want to do?
Yeah.
I want to do all the things. I have always thought about going into ministry and going to college, like major in biblical literature, a little bit of theology and counseling, and then potentially become a pastor. I've wanted to do that for a long time. But I also want to start my own business. Do I know what that business is? No, not yet. I'll figure that out. I've always been interested in photography and film. I've thought about doing that. But right now, I don't know. I'm focusing on school. I'm focusing on my job. So
My granddaughter that's in law school has a degree from Baylor in film and digital media. And
Wow.
she loved it. Catherine Land. If you ever want to talk to her about that,
Okay.
she loved doing that. But I want to tell you something. The wonderful thing about living in the world today is you do not have to know exactly what you want to do when you're your age. And when you take your first job, you don't have to stay in it till you drop dead. Now, my dad, when I told him that I was going to leave teaching and become a lawyer, I thought the man was going to have a stroke because he had worked for the same company for 43 years. And he told me, you start with Gulf Oil, you finish with Gulf Oil. And I said, well, Daddy, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change careers. So the wonderful thing about today is you're able to do that.
Yeah.
So you may start off as a minister, and then you may add that business, or you may leave something and do something else. It's okay.
it is okay. It's totally okay.
So what are you going to do?
I want to be a robotic engineer, and I'm hoping to go into the military with it.
Now tell me what you want to do.
A robotic engineer.
Oh, now we're talking math.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you watched that wonderful movie about the first woman at NASA that was black?
I have.
Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures.
Isn't-
I love that movie.
Yep.
Isn't that a great and when she said the man was jumping on her, the Dancing with the Wolves actor, I can't call his name right now. Remember, he said, "Why? You're taking too many bathroom breaks or too long on your bathroom break." You remember what she said? It took her 40 minutes because there was no bathrooms.
She had to
Well, he knocked that sign off of the bathroom. That's great. Have you been down to Houston?
I have before, but I've never gotten to go to NASA, which I would
No,
love to.
no, you've got to go. I just did it the first time. In fact, it was on a chamber. We drove down there because Charlie Duke was going to become Texan of the Year, and we were down there and going through the building. They have a wonderful museum. It's
would
just
love to
great.
go.
Well, it's only 2.5 hours away. You ought to get you a
Let's go hop in
trip
the
down
car.
there. Well, that's great. And what's John want to be?
What do I want to be?
Yeah, you want to come on real quick?
Am I coming over here? Well, hello. Similar to Josh, I have a couple different routes that I want to take. This is awkward. I've never been over here. Well, hi. Same as him, one of the routes I want to take is ministry and business. But another route I am possibly considering is CPA work because I know that can be very successful. That's really what I want to do with my life.
So that is a good career, and you can do that in business as well. Our daughter that I talk about that she got a degree in accounting.
Yeah.
And then she got a degree in finance. It was 1985, and the world was not in great economic shape. But so she went back and got some accounting degrees. Then she sat for the CPA test, and in those days there were 4 parts, and you had to pass them all. Now you could I think you could pass 2, and then you could take 2 later.
Right.
30,000 people took the CPA exam in the United States. 15% passed all 4. She did. That's when I knew I had a smart kid.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so she's combined law and CPA.
That's roughly what, 3,000 people? A
Yeah.
little over 3,000.
Well, but some of them passed 2 parts.
Okay.
And then they went back and did, but she passed all 4 at the same time. Now they've changed that a little. I forget how it is, but I even remember where I was on the highway on I-35 when she called me crying, "Mother, I've passed." I said, "You got to
On
be kidding
I-35.
me." Anyway,
That's awesome. Yeah.
well, good luck to all 3 of you.
Thank
Well,
you.
we appreciate it.
Well, that was
You want to come back over here?
Switch back.
Just bump the table.
That was John's first time on the podcast.
Oh, well,
That
good.
was a new experience.
He did a great job.
He did. Well, I want to thank you again so much for coming on. That was a absolute blast.
Yeah, well, that was fun for me
Yes.
too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. We love hearing your stories. And I'm
Well,
sure.
I'm glad because sometimes one of my oldest grandson who goes to tech says, "Oh gosh, not another story."
No, we love it. It was very inspiring. That's
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. It was
Yeah.
nice to meet all of you.
Yes,
Good
ma'am.
luck in
Yes,
whatever
ma'am.
you do. Don't ever give up.
Yes, ma'am.
You gotta try.
Can't
If you
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
try, you can't do anything.
Yep. Yep. And if you fail, get back up.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my parents always. I remember getting pitched off of a horse. They made me get right back on it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. Deuces.